Thank you very much indeed, Your Excellencies, distinguished scientists and experts and officials. It is indeed a great pleasure and honor for me to join you in Delhi for this very important discussion. It brings back memories from my visit to India in March this year, a few weeks before India was in complete lockdown. And I spent the first week of March in Delhi and Mumbai in discussions with various Indian leaders, ministers of the government, scientists, business leaders. And I was very much encouraged by the new level of interest and engagement by India in the Arctic and the polar region. And I think our dialogue today reflects very strongly this growing interest and participation of India. And for me, having enjoyed a long-standing friendship with this great country, it is especially important to bring India actively into the family of nations that are engaged both in terms of science and politics, diplomacy, and economic cooperation with especially the Arctic and the other polar ocean regions. It is interesting to remember that it's only in recent decades that science has made us aware of how important, for example, the Arctic Ocean and the Arctic region is for the future well-being and the economic prosperity of India and other Asian countries. The monsoons and other weather patterns in Asia are, as we all know, greatly influenced by what happens to the ice in the Arctic region. And of course, if the Greenland ice sheet continues to melt, this will have monumental, disastrous consequences for the coastal cities in India and every part of Asia. If only about a quarter of the Greenland ice sheet melts, and it is indeed melting very aggressively in these years, that will lead to about 2 meters of rise in sea levels everywhere in the world. And since I mentioned Mumbai, it's a city I visited before the pandemic closed down the world, you only have to stand at the seafront in Mumbai to realize how disastrous a 2 meters rise in sea levels will be, not only for that great city, but every coastal regions of India and other parts of the world. So to that extent, one could even argue that the future of the Arctic oceans and the Arctic ice and the glaciers in Greenland especially have become perhaps one of the greatest security threats to the future of India and other parts of the world. So therefore, as we move forward in our dialogue and cooperation, we should also realize how big part of the planet the Arctic actually is. To some extent in our languages, there has been a tendency to talk about the Arctic as if it was a region, like we talk about Lapland, we talk about in my country, Northern Iceland, and so on. But the Arctic is in fact of continental size on the planet. If we put it all together, ranging from Alaska across Canada to Greenland, through the Nordic countries into Russia, and bring in the vast Arctic oceans, we are talking about a part of the planet which is almost similar in size to Africa. So therefore, as we move forward in trying to comprehend the importance of the Arctic for the future of the planet, we should bring in mind that it is a continental-sized part of our planet. And we should also remember that in terms of our knowledge and our awareness of how interconnected this big part of the planet is to other parts of the planet, we are in the very early stages. I often mention as an explanatory contribution that my father was a young boy when the first human being set foot on Antarctica. And he was also a boy when the great explorers, the Norwegian explorers, the British explorers, the Canadian explorers, went into the Arctic. And in fact, through the entire Cold War period, the Arctic was a no-go territory in terms of global cooperation. So in fact, it is only in the last 20 years or so that this big part of the planet, including the Arctic oceans, have opened up for the possibility of international scientific, diplomatic, political, economic cooperation. It is the only part of the planet which has so recently opened up for cooperation of this kind. And to emphasize even further how early our discovery really is that now, these very days, the great mosaic expedition is coming to a close. As you know, it involves many countries, scientists from almost 20 countries, research vessels and icebreakers, not only from Europe, but also from Asia. But it is the first time in scientific history, in human history, that an expedition has been at the center of the Arctic Ocean and close to the North Pole for the entire period of 12 months, including winter. We have never before in our human history been able to gather scientific data on that part of the planet during winter time. So as we move forward in our dialogue and discussion, we should bring in mind that we are the early pioneers of bringing forward scientific knowledge, human awareness, and political and diplomatic cooperation on this very important part of the globe. A part of the globe which is absolutely crucial for the future of the planet. As I mentioned before, the melting of the Greenland ice sheet will cause sea level to rise everywhere in the world, including the great cities of the coastal regions of India and every country in Asia. But let us not forget either that as we try to counteract the threat of climate change, which is bringing fires, hurricanes, floods to many different parts of the world, the forefront of that change is in the Arctic and the Arctic sea ice and the Arctic Ocean. So we are also talking about a part of the planet which is the frontline battleground for the climate future of our planet. All of this taken together makes our dialogue and cooperation absolutely crucial. But many people are asking, is it possible? Is it possible for us to really go forward in constructive cooperation in this area when we look at other parts of the world where conflict, tensions, even wars are characterizing the present agenda? And when we see, for example, a growing tension between China and the United States and a tendency to bring the Arctic into that new framework of global competition. So let me offer you some examples that are encouraging in terms of the possibility for constructive global cooperation on the Arctic Ocean and the Arctic regions. Many people fear that with the aggressive melting of the Arctic sea ice, big fishing nations, even from Asia, like Korea, Japan, China, and others, would bring their fleets, their huge fishing fleets, into the Arctic Ocean. And therefore, the fishing stocks that would move towards the north due to the melting of the Arctic sea ice would be in grave danger. And that is why the treaty, the agreement, which was signed 2 years ago to preserve high sea fisheries in the Arctic Ocean when the ice melts, is of such fundamental importance. George Shultz, the distinguished former Secretary of State in America, probably together with Henry Kissinger, both of them in the 90s, now the most respected living former international statesman of an American administration, said a few years ago, in order to indicate the importance of the Arctic Ocean, imagine you get the New York Times tomorrow morning, and the headline is "A New Ocean on the Planet." Very interesting statement by George Shultz, and he's absolutely correct. The melting of the Arctic sea ice is for the first time in human history creating a new ocean on our planet. And that is why it was of great significance and encouragement that 2 years ago, countries like the United States, China, Russia, Korea, Japan, European Union, as well as my own country and the other Nordic countries, came together to create a treaty, an international treaty on the emerging Arctic Ocean, outlining a pattern for scientific cooperation and the regulation of fisheries if the science would allow that to take place. And despite the conflicts that we have been observing in other parts of the world during these recent years, and the tension between Russia, United States, China, it is of great significance that they have come together in this agreement together with the rest of us to create this extraordinary Arctic Ocean Treaty, which was signed 2 years ago. And hopefully India will also join this treaty based on the new awareness in the government of India and other Indian leaders that India has, together with China, Japan, and Korea, be a part of this growing global cooperation. So let me offer you here today the encouragement to my friends in the government of India that they also become a signature party to this new treaty on the Arctic Ocean. The other example I want to offer you today is the constructive growth of the Arctic Circle, the organized platform which I helped to create 7 years ago. Before the Arctic Circle was created, gatherings on the Arctic were relatively small, 50 people, 100 people or so coming together, and they were very specialized. Now, in just 7 years, the Arctic Circle has become the preeminent global platform for cooperation and dialogue on the Arctic. This new structure, the Arctic Circle, rests on 4 pillars. The first pillar is the annual Arctic Circle assemblies held here in Iceland. They bring together now every year over 2,000 people from more than 70 countries, presidents, ministers, leading scientists, experts, officials, entrepreneurs, indigenous leaders, activists, environmental organizations, and others, where through the democratic nature of the Arctic Circle assemblies, any institution or agency or even a gathering of people can come and create their own sessions, and where the young activist has the same right to speak as a head of state or a head of government. Secondly, we have created the Arctic Circle forums, They are smaller in scale and more specialized, but they are spread over the world. So far, they have been held in the United States, in Canada, in China, in Korea, in Singapore, in the United Kingdom, in Greenland, and in other places. And the next 4 will be in Berlin on the role of Europe in the future of the Arctic, co-hosted by the German Ministry of Science and the Foreign Ministry of Germany. In Tokyo on Arctic science in relation to the Arctic Science Ministerial Meeting. The 3rd forum in the coming months will be in Greenland on the growing relevance of Greenland in Arctic cooperation. And the 4th will be in Abu Dhabi. And I introduced that in my recent visit to India last March, where the United Arab Emirates government, together with the Arctic Circle, will host for the first time a grand international conference on the lessons that the Arctic can bring to the Himalayan countries, to India, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, and the other countries in the Himalayan region, where the cooperation has not yet reached even the level of Arctic cooperation 20 years ago. There is no Himalaya Third Pole table where all these countries come regularly together. So let me, on the basis of how you want to link together the Arctic, Antarctica, and the Himalayan regions, invite you to start preparing for the Indian participation in the Arctic Circle Forum in Abu Dhabi, which we will hold when the pandemic has receded, and we will be allowed to do so on the basis of safety and health. The other 2 new pillars to the Arctic Circle global structure is what we call the Arctic Circle Virtual, which is a new media platform which will be launched in about a week's time on the 6th of October, where Lisa Murkowski, Senator Murkowski, will be speaking on the relevance of the US presidential election to the future of the Arctic. It is really the first time in history that the outcome of a US presidential election will have a great relevance to the future of the Arctic. And we will then continue with the Arctic Circle Virtual and allow prominent leaders from other parts of the world to present their view, and a global audience anywhere in any country to put their questions and comments into that discussion. And the 4th pillar is the Arctic Circle Mission Councils, where we bring together a core group of people who will, for 1 to 3 years, explore various aspects of the Arctic and the planetary future. The first such mission council was established a few years ago on port and shipping in the Arctic. The second was announced at the Assembly last year on the global Arctic, on the participation of countries in Asia and countries of Europe in the Arctic cooperation. And in the next few months, we will announce 3 other Arctic Circle mission councils. All of this indicates, together with the new treaty on the Arctic Ocean, that despite tension and conflicts in other parts of the world, we are indeed moving forward in constructive international cooperation on the Arctic on many levels: diplomatic, political, scientific, business, as well as bringing in the people who live in these regions, the indigenous people, whether they are in the Arctic or in the Himalaya Third Pole region. So, in the light of all of this, as was my message in March to the various distinguished leaders in India I was privileged to meet, it is of high importance that India engages in this new global dialogue in a very constructive and effective way. So therefore, let me again thank you for bringing me into this discussion, but above all, to congratulate you for having taken the initiative to bring the dialogue on the Arctic, the Antarctica, and also the third pole Himalayan region together into a comprehensive awareness of how the future of our planet will be determined in the ice-covered areas of the world. Thank you.